Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the TradeStation Masterclass. My name is Jesus Nava. I'm the Director of Client Training and Education for TradeStation Securities. It's always a pleasure to join you guys and talk a little bit about TradeStation technology and what are the capabilities of the trading platform. Today, we're going to talk about custom studies. There's a series or a collection of studies that are part of the TradeStation platform that I like to talk about because a lot of times they're not understood very well. And I want to make sure that you guys know what they're there for and how they're utilized. So before we jump into today's topic, let's just go through some of the disclosures. Just keep in mind that every symbol and idea that I talk about is for educational purposes only. These are not recommendations of TradeStation. Also, that active trading is not suitable for everyone. It should only be done with risk capital, and past historical performance is no indication of future results. For additional information on these disclosures, go to www.tradestation.com/important-information. All right, guys. For your convenience, there is a chat window available here in the Zoom technology that you can access. And I encourage everyone to use it. If you have any questions or any comments about what's being discussed, please feel free to make your voice heard right here. I'm going to be looking at the chat window once in a while just to make sure that I can address questions if I can, in a live setting. And if I cannot, we can leave those for a later time. But I do want to appreciate you guys taking time out of your schedule to learn a little bit about TradeStation. You probably see that I'm joined by one of my colleagues, Manolo. He's going to be moderating the chat. So if you guys are asking for anything in particular, he's there to point us to different links and things that we're going to be referencing throughout the presentation. All right. Thank you, everyone, for being here. Let's go ahead and get started. I'm going to switch over to my TradeStation platform and talk about the series of studies that are here built into the platform. I'm going to get started with a chart analysis application. So let me go ahead and open it up. Okay, here's a chart of Apple. The symbol doesn't really matter because what I'm going to show you is what the custom indicators are there and what they can do. If you go to the studies dialog and you click on add study, you're going to find that there is a group of studies that start with the name custom. You have a custom 1 line, 2 line, 3 line, 4 line, and then you have a custom quote. We're going to take a look at a custom quote in a little moment. I think more fitting when you use it inside of RadarScreen. But the custom 1, 2, 3, and 4 lines are used for you to supply the formula, or what is it that you want to see plotted on the chart analysis window. And this is where you can bring in any trading idea, any calculation that you want to see on a chart, anything that you can think of, you can bring it in and plug it in into one of these custom 1 line or multiple line study. Let's start off with a 1 line, and I'll show you exactly what I mean. Custom 1 line. Let me click OK. And I'm not going to modify anything. I'm just going to put it right here on the screen, exactly how it comes out of the box. What I'm going to do is I'm going to make the line a little bit thicker. Sometimes, the lines are not as thick as I would like them to be. And for a presentation like this one, which is streamed live, sometimes, those thin lines don't look very nice. I like to bump the thickness a little bit. You can do that also on your TradeStation if you like your lines to be a little bit thicker. But okay, the custom 1 line is a study that I just put in there. I mean, if you're not familiar with the custom studies, you're probably looking at this and saying, well, what is this telling us, right? I mean, if we look at the value here on the far right, we have a 5.7677, which is updating in real time, but I'm not really sure what it is. It only says custom 1 line in the name of the study. So for us to know exactly what the study is doing, we have to go into the settings of the study and see what the formula or the default formula is. So I'm going to double click on that line. And if I go to the inputs tab, you're going to see that there's a formula in there. All right. So it says close minus the close. And then there's a 10 inside of square brackets. Pretty cool, right? And if you're not familiar with easy language and historical references, This is the way that TradeStation makes reference to a historical value. By plugging in a number inside square brackets, you're technically telling TradeStation, go and grab the closing price of 10 periods ago. Exactly that, So if you're looking at a daily chart, which I'm looking at a daily chart of Apple. If you say 10 periods back, it's going to mean, 10 daily bars back. Grab the closing price, subtract it from the closing price right now. So this will give you a positive number if the current closing price is higher, or a negative number if it's lower. And you have a relationship of prices from current prices to a period in the past. And you can, of course, come here and modify that 10 if you want to calculate the percentage change, or at least, this is not a percentage change, it's a net change. So if I'm looking at the 5.63 over here in yellow, that just means that the current price of Apple at 182.94 is $5.65 higher than what it was 10 days ago. Now, of course, these are not calendar days, these are trading days. So it's just making that real-time calculation of what was happening to Apple 10 days ago and giving you the net change going forward. Of course, if I come here and I change this to 30 days back and I click OK, of course, this is going to change automatically. Now, instead of showing a 5, I'm showing a 13 because the current price of Apple is $13 higher than what it was 30 trading days ago. So you can already see how flexible this study is in accepting your own formula and accepting your own trading calculation. So let me go over here and then double click on this line again. One thing that just happened right now, and it's good that it happened to me so that you can be, aware of what happens on TradeStation when you double click on something and you missed the item that you wanted to double click on. I wanted to double click on that yellow line, but instead, I guess it was just the location of my mouse pointer, but it seems like it double clicked on the background and the customize window dialog comes up, which is okay. Since I've been using TradeStation for some time, I know that I double clicked on the wrong item. What I wanted to see here is the modification or the editing window for the custom one line. So if you double click and you see something that doesn't look familiar, or you go to the customize window dialog, you already know that you double clicked on the wrong thing. So I'm going to go ahead and cancel out of this and try to double click one more time. Oh, it went to the same place, cancel, and then try it again. Now I'm in the customize indicator. And you're probably asking, why am I double clicking on items that I want to edit? I just like that shortcut. And I know a lot of times you want to get to the dialogues a little bit faster than going through the menus. Of course, I could have gone here to the studies because custom one line is a study. I could have gone here to edit studies. I could have selected custom one line and then click on customize here on the right, and it takes me to the exact same place. But double clicking on the line takes me directly here without the extra clicks and the extra menus. So double click again, but just be aware of the title on the dialog because customize indicator, custom one line is exactly where I want to be. So the formula, close minus the close of 30 bars ago. Now this can be anything that you guys want. Like for example, if I wanted to have an average price for the bar, if I just type in the word close, by the way, close, nothing else. Close is just going to refer to either the closing price of the candle, if it's a historical candle, or the current closing price. And of course, the bar hasn't closed. Well, so when you use the word close, it's just going to look at the last traded price, and it's going to be a real-time indicator. So let me go ahead and click OK here. And you can see that the line or the yellow line here pretty much follows the same trend of the candlesticks above. In fact, the price here, the 183.40, is exactly the price of the candlesticks. 183.40 or 41 is updating in real time. So by just typing the word close, you get a real-time calculation on the closing prices, and you can see it directly here on the chart. But if I want to see more of an average price of the candle, now I know that that's the closing price, right? Today's candle it's somewhat of a smaller candle, compared to other candles that I see here historically. It seems like there's not much movement so far for Apple. The high and the low, we're between a range of maybe not even $2 in range. So you can see, you can measure that distance if you want to. So for example, let me come here to my line here and say my formula is going to be the high minus the low. High minus low, of course, gives you range. Let's click OK here. And here we go. High minus low, we have a $1.69 if you wanted to measure that exactly. I went to the candlestick and I kind of just noticed the high and the low. And I said, well, it's about $2. But if you wanted to have the real calculation or the exact mathematical formula, now you know that it's been $1.69. Now look at the values historically, though, and you can see that whenever you have a spike in this line, it's because the candle is significantly bigger than the others. This spike, of course, relates to that big candle over here. If we look at another big candle, for example, back here, then it says it correlates to that other big candle because the line is measuring range on the candles. And of course, if you wanted to create an average out of that, just to see how this relates to, or the actual value relates to an average, you can do maybe a two-line indicator. Let me show you what I mean by that. Let me go ahead and remove this custom one line. I'm going to go back to studies, add to study, and then go to a custom two-line study. Let's go ahead and use that. Since I'm in the formatting dialog, let me just make the lines thicker. This is one that uses 2 lines. I'm going to make that the default so that I don't have to change it next time I use them. I'm going to click OK. Now it seems like it's just one line. Now let me go over here to the settings of this indicator and go to inputs, because here you can realize that the formula is exactly the same for the 2 lines. So what happens? Visually, the lines are going to be exactly on top of each other. And it seems like it's just one line, but there's actually 2. They're just overlaid on top of each other. But over here on Formula 1, I can say, okay, give me the high minus the low, and then click OK. Now you can see the difference between the lines. Now I just changed the formula for plot number 1, which is the yellow line. So we're back at $1.69. We were looking at that before. And the cyan line this time is showing us, the difference between the closing price right now and the closing price 10 periods ago. But you can already see that you have an indicator that can give you 2 lines, and each one of the lines have a totally separate calculation. Let me go ahead and double click on my indicator one more time, because what I wanted to do is look at the range, or the average range. I'm not going to call this average true range because the calculation is a little bit different. It looks at the closing price of the previous bar. But if you just want a straight average of the range, this is what you would do. On the second formula, I'm going to use the word average. This is where I make a parenthesis and I say that a little bit of easy language understanding and a little bit of easy language knowledge can take your technical analysis and your strategy testing and your idea testing to the next level, because you can do all sorts of different modifications to things that already exist to give you, the information that you're looking for. Like, for example, we started off, measuring range on each one of the candles and been able to identify some of the spikes that we were seeing historically. Now we're thinking about, what if we add an average to see how those spikes compare to an average? This is exactly what I'm talking about. We have to use a certain calculation that provides an average. And for that, you need to know a little bit of easy language. From within the customized indicator, we have access to a dictionary. The dictionary button that you see here is more for programming or the easy language dictionary, but it does tell you what is available and what you can use inside of the indicator. For somebody that hasn't programmed before, it may be a little bit challenging, but these classes, we like to take these classes to the next level so that you can see the capabilities of TradeStation. And that's why they're called master classes, because we want you to have a great understanding of what the platform is capable of doing and utilize all the potential. So I'm going to click here on dictionary and show you something. Okay. Sometimes you're going to get an error because what I did is I clicked in the field and I tried to modify the formula before finishing it, and it just told me you have kind of an error there because it's not complete. Because I wanted to come here and show you what you can do from within TradeStation. You don't have to go to the development environment or be a full-blown programmer in order to do these type of things. Now, I really don't consider myself to be an easy language programmer. I do understand easy language and I can make all sorts of modifications and give you, the core foundational knowledge that you need to, write code. But here, what I wanted to show you is user functions, because user functions are snippets of easy language programming that is already created for you. And you can bring in formulas that are already created and are built into the language. Now, once I select user functions, I just go here to the list of names. There's over 400 different and unique functions in here. But if I scroll down, you're going to see that I find the word average. And of course, you have other, average deviation, average range. So what I want you guys to do is explore all the different calculations that are already here, because maybe you don't have to supply a full-blown formula or mathematical formula to that extent. If you wanted to modify an indicator, maybe there's already a function created for you. So if I highlight average, let me put my glasses on because the text here is getting a little bit smaller. It tells me right here that it returns a simple average of values over the length of bars. And best yet, it provides me an example on how I can use the average function. So you can see there in the highlighted section that I have here in this dialog that I use the word average, and then inside parentheses, I just have to supply what is it that I want to average and for how long, how many periods. And that's how you create an average inside of TradeStation. So this average word that I added here, I'm going to open up the parentheses, and in this example, what I want to average is the high minus the low. Notice that I'm just plugging in that formula in there. Add a comma. I'm going to tell it to average it for 30 bars. And then close parentheses. That's all that the average function needs. It needs to know what is the parameter that it needs to be averaged, and then for how long. And as soon as I click OK, there it is. Now I can see the indicator right here at the bottom and the different spikes and how it relates to a 30-period average. If I think that maybe 30 made the line a little bit too smooth, and I want it to be a little bit more sensitive to, what's happening in real time, of course, you can come here to the indicator and modify that value. The 30 made it a little bit too smooth for my taste. Let me change it to 10. So now you can see how the cyan line is a little bit more sensitive to what's happening in current market conditions, and it just molds the data a little bit more. But you can see how the different spikes on that indicator relate to the average. In fact, let's see what we can do here. This is the yellow line is just average. Let's go ahead and turn that into a histogram to see what it looks like. I'm going to double click on the indicator one more time, go to the style, and I'm going to make the plot one a histogram, and I'm going to make it thicker, and then just click OK. So now it gives you a very nice representation of what's happening to the range. And you can see if the range is above average or below average. So if we open up the chart a little bit, well, you can see that currently the candles that we were referring to at the very beginning, we said that they were kind of small compared to other candles. And you can see here mathematically that, yeah, it is way below what the average it would be. The 10-day average is $3.14. The movement between the high and the low for the last 10 periods. Right now, we have $1.69, which is just the size or the range of the current bar. So What I'm trying to say is that you can plug in any mathematical formula into these studies and make them calculate anything you like. Now, in addition to having, the multiple line plots, you also have um, show me's and paint bars, which are great indicators for charting because they highlight certain areas of the chart that may be interesting to you. For example, if I find a candle that exceeds the average here, maybe I want to paint that candle a particular color so that it enhances my visual and I can see the historical alert. Let's go ahead and try to do that. I'm going to go here to studies, add studies, and let me go to paint bar. Paint bar changes the color of the candle, by the way. And if what you're looking for is not available as a default paint bar, use the custom paint bar. Here it is, custom paint bar. And the same as the custom indicator, this is designed for you to supply a formula or a statement that is true or false. Let's go ahead and take a look. I'm going to click on OK. Notice how the color, the default color here is magenta. I'm going to click OK. And all of a sudden, I see candles that are painted magenta. Now, of course, the same way that I did at the beginning, I'm not really sure what this paint bar is looking for, but I'm going to right click on one of those magenta paint bars, and I'm going to go to Edit Custom Paint Bar. And if I go to the inputs, this is where I see the formula being used for this particular paint bar. And here it is. Notice that is not a mathematical formula. It's more like a true false statement. Of course, it can have math in it. It can have a mathematical formula as part of the calculation, but you can see that it's a statement. Here, the high, if you read it, the high is less than the high 1 bar ago, and the low is greater than the low 1 bar ago. So the high is less than the high, and the low is greater than the low 1 bar ago. So what is this looking for? It's looking for, if you're familiar with candlestick patterns information, what this is looking for is an inside bar, a little bar, because the high is lower than the previous high, and the low is greater than the previous low. If I look at any of these candles, let me resize this a little bit so that we can see more of the chart. Like, for example, this candle right here. Everybody sees the magenta candle. Even though it looks bigger than the previous one, it's just comparing the high to high and low to low. And if you look at the wick of this prior candle, you're going to see that it's bigger than this magenta one. So these are all inside bars. Of course, the formula is there for you to change it. It's designed as a custom paint bar for you to, highlight the bars that you want to highlight. So let's go ahead and take a look. I'm going to right click on that magenta, and I'm going to edit this so that I can make my own calculation. I'm getting a couple of questions here. One was sent earlier from Mark. Could you run through a butterfly trade? No, the class that where we enter trades. Can we, Mark? We have a getting started class tomorrow, and we usually open up the floor for Q&A after the presentations. You're welcome to join us tomorrow if you'd like. Or if you stay longer, maybe we can do it after class, but let me just see how long the class runs. Russell is asking, can you make an arrow point when the MACD crosses the signal line? That's a good question, Russell. And the direct answer is yes, you can. It does require more programming than what I'm doing here. For example, here I'm just modifying the formulas and the conditions for certain custom studies. But what you're looking to do is to draw arrows, which requires a little bit more programming. I had one of my colleagues create a study that draws arrows, but I wasn't ready to share that study here, so I don't have it handy. But if it's an example you'd like to see, you can always send us a question to education at tradestation.com, and I can look for that study and maybe provide it to you as an example. Okay, let's go ahead and take a look. And Mark, tomorrow's class is getting started. And Manolo, if you're there, can you send him the link to the next class? So that way that we know when they're happening. Okay, so going back to this study, we wanted to highlight the bars that exceed the average maybe by double the amount. So let's go ahead and take a look, erase this formula. And the formula that I'm going to use is high minus low. And I can put that in parentheses. Sometimes parentheses allows you to kind of, follow the logic and be sure that that's exactly what you wanted to do. I want the high and the low to be greater than the average of the high minus the low. Since a lot of times, I cannot extend this field, one thing that I do is sometimes use Notepad to put the formula in, and you can see the logic, and that way you can just copy and paste. Because that field is very small, and if your condition is very long, you're not going to be able to see the complete thing. So let's put it here, and then we'll copy and paste it into the field once we're finished, okay? So over here, high minus low, if you get that mathematical value, if it's greater than the average of the high and the low for a period of 10 bars, and then we're going to take all this function and we're going to multiply it by 2. Why 2? Because I want it to be double what the average is. And if you calculate the range and it's greater than the average by 2, so if the average is $1.50, it would have to be greater than 3. That's what I'm trying to look for, okay? So let me go ahead and copy this, Control C, and then I'm going to put it right here. Let me go ahead and, okay. Let me put it in here. Let me highlight all this. I can just, erase everything that's there. Paste it. What I copied from the Notepad. Notice that it has the ×2 at the very end. And then click OK. And here we go. Now we changed the condition, and only the candles that exceed the average by 2 times the range are the ones that are painted in magenta. So pretty cool, huh? Now we have a way of identifying those areas where we had high volatility because the price moved up and down higher than its average, and what happens after that. So you have a great visual of where those points where the price changed and adjusted accordingly, maybe, so those are things that allow you to identify these areas on the chart where something could have happened. Maybe a trade could have been placed, or maybe you can compare and see historically if it correlates, if there's some correlation on the behavior. This is only possible if you have this flexibility of adjusting your calculation so that you can identify those points, okay? Let's go ahead and take a look at some other questions here. Can you create an alert from the standard chart as opposed to a specific study? For instance, I'd like an alert after 3 red bars for a certain group of stocks. Yes, you can. And Richard, thank you for asking that question, because maybe we can use that as an example. In Richard's example, he wants to look for 3 consecutive red bars. So we can use all of these custom paint bars and show me's. They have built-in alert. So if the condition is true, it generates the alert for you. So let me show you what I mean by that. If I go to custom paint bar, alert message is something that I can customize. So I can say range is double its average. Okay, range is double its average. That's the alert message. So that would only be real time on today's bar, but that's okay. You have the alert criteria, and you can do a custom message for this alert. Let me go ahead and take a look at symbols here that have a big range. Let's see. Maybe if I put that into RadarScreen, we can find a stock that is matching the criteria in real time. Let me open up RadarScreen for a moment because custom studies can also be used in RadarScreen for you to find stocks that match a certain criteria. Let me do that here because I think you're going to find this example very interesting. Let me resize this. All right, let's suppose that I'm going to scan on the NASDAQ 100. Let me remove some of these columns that I don't need. All right, this is a 5-minute time frame. If I want to change that to daily so that it matches my chart, I can. And I'm going to go here to the plus to add a study. And let's see, let's go ahead and add the same paint bar that we have on the chart, right? So I'm going to do custom paint bar. I'm going to add it and move it down. All right, so that's the custom paint bar. Of course, we have all these plots that we don't need, but this is just something that you can hide if you want to. But let me go ahead and copy the formula. I think it's still in memory, so I can right-click on this study, go to Edit Custom Paint Bar for all symbols, and in the inputs, I'm going to use the same formula that I'm using in charting. There we go. It has the ×2 at the very end. And I'm going to do the custom alert message. Range is double the average. And click OK. All right, so I don't have any symbols here that are triggering the alert. Let me go ahead and enable the alert and see if we get anything. Alert, enable the alert, no message sender notification. It doesn't seem like there's any symbol that matches the criteria at the moment, which is interesting, you know? Let me go ahead and do something. Let me go ahead and remove, or instead of removing, let me go ahead and add. I'm going to add the NASDAQ, not the NASDAQ, I'll add the S&P 500, more symbols. Because this will take a little bit longer to calculate. I'm adding 500 symbols, and the indicator has to calculate symbol by symbol. Still running its calculations. I don't see all the different orange little dots on the right-hand side. I did see them all for the NASDAQ 100, but it's just filling in the data for me little by little. You can see here that it's calculating on every single symbol as we go along. Maybe, you know, maybe the criteria that I'm looking for, you know, twice the average for the past 10 days is a little restrictive. That doesn't happen very often. And we see here for the case, excuse me. In the case of Microsoft, you know, the criteria hadn't been met since March of this year, March 13. For Apple, if I switch the chart to Apple, it did happen earlier. It happened, you know, June 6th, but you can see how long it takes for the criteria to be met. Now, do any symbols here match the criteria? This is still filling up, you know. Let me go ahead and filter my RadarScreen and say, filter by custom paint bar, alert, true. So no symbols come here yet. So it seems like either my alert criteria is too restrictive. Yeah, this is still filling up, you know, symbols are still calculating. I can either make the condition a little bit more relaxed, or I can change the time frame. Maybe on a daily time frame, we're looking at a quiet day today, so there's not that many symbols that are exceeding the average range as I'm expecting them to, you know. So if we change the time frame, let's say we're looking at a 30-minute bar, you know, the indicator is going to calculate one more time. Let me go here to a 30-minute time frame. And of course, since I'm since I'm doing a scan, already on 600 symbols here in RadarScreen, it takes a little while for my computer to respond. While this is calculating, let me go ahead and take a look at some of the questions that are coming through. Rich is asking, have never inputted anything. How do we get greater, less than inputted? That is just in the condition. When we did the statement, this one right here, this is what any paint bar or any custom show me or custom paint bar, they will take conditional statements or comparable statements where it's either true or false. In this case, we used, the high minus the low, which gives you the range, and it's comparing that to the average range for the past 10 bars, and it's looking for a greater value. But this is greater than, and we put all this expression into the inputs, and the indicator takes care of everything else for us. Right? This doesn't seem to want to respond. Maybe I just asked my computer to do more than what it was capable of doing. So let me go ahead and remove some symbols from my RadarScreen. I'm going to remove the whole S&P 500 because what I'm looking for is for one condition to be true. So I kept the NASDAQ 100. Let me go ahead and reload. Russell, thank you for the suggestion. So commodities probably showing more movement than stocks. Thank you for those suggestions. We'll take a look at them in just a moment. Let's see. When you take a look at USO here. Yeah. I think my trade station is hung up doing something. So let's go ahead and do, are there any questions so far about this functionality? Because it's interesting that we have all these custom studies that allow you to pretty much bring in your calculations, bring in, your definitions. What is it that you're looking for? I can see some of the yellow dots here filling in. By the way, if you're not familiar with these yellow dots, I know they're very small on the right-hand side, but what they do is they just to tell you that there's an alert enabled on that cell. When you use a paint bar instead of RadarScreen, most of the time it will not plot any values until there is an alert generated. So that's why all my list here is pretty much empty. So my RadarScreen came back. In this case, no true alerts. Let's go ahead and change the time frame here to 5 minutes. So this is all 5 minutes. So this will recalculate. Maybe I'm not getting any alert here. So let me go ahead and check the easy language, because I want to make sure that these indicators are going to be generating alerts for you. Okay, so it has the criteria up here. Everybody sees the criteria. This is what we saw inside of the custom paint bar when we first used it. Now we replaced that statement with our own statement, which is okay. That's what the indicator, well, that's what this paint bar is designed to do. But if you can notice that here's the alert. If criteria, then begin. Plot paint bar and alert. So it is built in. If the criteria is true, then it should automatically trigger the alert with the alert message that you supplied. I think it's just a matter of not, oh, here we go. We got one right here on a 5 minute time frame. We have CTAS. This is exactly what I wanted to see. Let me go here, link these together, pull it up on my chart, and here we go. Now we're getting this current bar on a 5 minute time frame that is bigger, or the range is twice as big as the average. So real-time alert right there. I didn't get the pop-up message on this one, maybe because I'm waiting for a tick to happen. That's when the pop-up message shows up. So maybe it'll happen in just a moment. Let's see. Question from Richard. Do custom studies need to be verified? They do not. And that's one of the benefits of using custom studies, that you don't have to go to the development environment and try to figure out how to create a study, how to verify it, how to compile it. These are very easy to use. And you go in here in the front end, you go to from the TradeStation platform, you just go to edit the indicator, supply the calculation you need, and that's it. TradeStation will take care of everything else for you. So the alert is not true anymore. So if I change the condition here a little bit, let me go to the inputs. And what I'll do is I'll remove the ×2 at the very end. So that way I'll get more alerts. And I'll do that here as well. I'm going to go to edit here. And I'll remove the ×2. And then let me go ahead and turn this filter on. So out of the 100, we have 3. BKR is also showing us that today's range is bigger than the average. So now you can see that happening right here in front of your eyes. So yes, when I first started the condition, it was a little bit too restrictive, and that's why we were not getting any alerts. Now going back to Marvin says, curious about the syntax in your formula. You have high minus low with spaces in between, but later in the line of code, you have it without spaces. Thank you for that question, Marvin. And what Marvin is referring to is maybe here. Yes, right here, I have spaces in the mathematical formula here. And yes, you have good eyes in pointing that out. Easy language is not, doesn't keep track of spaces. Spaces are not really that important in easy language. Spaces in easy language are important for the reader. So as a programmer, you can choose whether you want to add spaces or not in between these expressions. Sometimes I add the spaces because it looks a little nicer, a little bit more spaced out. But what easy language sees is just words and operators, and it just compiles them together, and it pretty much skips all the spaces in between. So all these spaces that you see in this expression can be removed, and the expression would still function because easy language is able to read it. But for readability, I may want to add some space here and there just to make things a little bit easier to understand. Up to you to do that, and it doesn't matter how you build it. So that's what happens there. Somebody had mentioned 3 red bars in sequence. Let's see if we can create that. I think it was a suggestion from Richard. So when you get 3 consecutive red bars, meaning that the close is lower than its open, then I want to be notified. So let's see if that is something we can do. Let me remove this custom paint bar. I'll remove this indicator at the bottom. Let's change this chart to daily. There we go. And I'm going to use studies, add studies, and we're going to do a custom show me. We're going to go to the show me this time because I want to mark the candles where the condition is true. So let's see. Although we should have something, we have consecutive ups and consecutive downs, which may be something that matches what you're looking for, but let's go ahead and create it from scratch. I'm going to do custom show me. And in the inputs, again, we have the criteria. Now, what is going to be our criteria? Let's go ahead and put it here in my notepad so we can follow along. So it's going to be, well, first of all, we want it close is less than open. Right? Close is less than open, so we know that we are in a down bar, right? And what we want, so we can either compare the closing prices, like lower closing prices. That could be something that, but that's what consecutive ups does, So on a multi-condition setup, it may be a little bit more challenging because, first of all, when you set down bars, we want to compare the close against the open, making sure that that condition is true. But then you want to also create another condition that has, if you get 3 consecutive ones of those, then I want you to keep track of that one as well. It may be a little bit challenging to put that into a condition like this, but let's go ahead and do the closing price, or the one that is called consecutive, So you can do, if close is less than the close of 1 bar ago, and the close of 1 bar ago is less than close of 2 bars ago, and the close of 2 bars ago is less than the close of 3 bars ago. So I think I went a little bit, 1 extra bar, meaning that I'm looking at the current close, I'm looking at the close of 1 bar ago, 2 bars ago, and 3 bars ago. So technically here we have 3 consecutive lower closes. Let's go ahead and use this expression and see what happens. I'm going to copy this, put it right here inside of the criteria. And you can understand why sometimes I use the notepad is because it doesn't fit in here, or at least, for it to visually see the whole thing. And the plot price here is where the dot is going to be. I'm going to put the dot on the low of the candle minus range times 0.25. What this does is that instead of putting the dot right on the low, which sometimes covers a little bit of the candle, it moves the dot a little bit lower by taking into account the range of the candle, grabbing a quarter of that range, and that's the value that's being subtracted from the low. So what I'm trying to say is that the plot price is just the location of where you want the dot to be shown on the chart. And the alert message, we can say for lower lows. You can see the dot is going to be yellow. Let me make the dot bigger so that we can see it on the screen. And I'm going to click OK. So most recent condition here. Yes, low, lower than the previous, lower than the previous, and lower than the previous. But then going back to the original request, this candle, even though it is lower than the previous one, it's not a red candle. So in your original example, we needed more conditions because it was conditions within conditions. We wanted a red candle here as well. So it does require a little bit more programming to do exactly what you wanted to do. But if you're monitoring, lower price or lower closing prices, like over here, this would have been a perfect example of what you're looking for. 3 consecutive, not only lower lows, but 3 consecutive red candles as are shown here. Okay. But this, again, this type of show me can also be added to RadarScreen in case you're looking for stocks that are set up in this particular way. If you want to, in real time, look at a stock that has 3 consecutive lower lows, we can come here, remove this custom paint bar, add the show me that we're working with on the chart, which is a show me right here, show me. Then we go here to custom show me. Let's go ahead and add it. Let me move it down at the very end. Let me right click and modify this because I want to make sure that it has the same formula that I'm using on the chart. There we go. I'm going to click OK, and let me turn on the alert here. Because alert is what's going to tell you if any symbols are meeting the criteria. We have a few of them. Let's go ahead and filter them. There we go. So all of these right now have 3, even 4 consecutive lower lows. Let's go and take a look at Airbnb. Of course, this is the 5-minute time frame. Let's go ahead and change this to daily. So on a daily time frame, let's wait until this refreshes and see if any symbols are meeting the criteria. Now we have 2. This is VRSK. You can see that lower lows, 1, 2, 3, 3 consecutive lower lows. This other one is booking. We have 1, 2, 3 consecutive lower lows. This doesn't seem like it meets the criteria. I'm not sure what happened right there. It seems like the inputs went in there, close. Oh, because, oh, I see what's happening. Now I'm looking at these candles and I'm looking at the low of the candles, when in reality, my syntax was looking at the closing prices. So close here, and close here. Is not looking at the wicks or the low of the wicks. So that's something that I missed in my original analysis. All right. Perfect. Let's see. Here's a question from Terry to turn a 4-line into a custom 6-line. We don't have a custom 6-line. I think the highest it goes is 4 lines. But if you need an indicator that has 6 different lines, rather than have a custom 6-line, you can just go right into the development environment and create a study that has the 6 lines. That would be my recommendation, because custom studies only go up to 4 lines, as you saw right there on the list. We do our easy language classes where we teach you how to program easy language from a basic standpoint. So those are classes that you probably want to attend in order to create your custom studies. Igor, I think, was 3 red bars, close minus the open, close 1 bar, less than open 1 bar, and close 2 bars. Yeah, so I think Igor was suggesting a way for us to look at the conditions a little bit differently. Thank you for that, Igor. And I think you're going in the right direction there, because it was a little bit more, there was a little bit more conditions when I thought about the idea. Then I said, it seems like we're looking and trying to compare different things here. All right. Any other questions, guys, on this functionality? Also, I don't show this much, but if you go here instead of RadarScreen, let me go and disable this for a moment. Sometimes you may want to add some notes on any symbol for whatever reason, and custom RadarScreen gives you the ability to add a column called custom note. Let me show you what that does. Custom note right here. I'm going to add it and click OK. Custom note is a way for you to add text, anything you want to say on any of these symbols. For example, if it's Apple, I can just double click inside of this cell, go to the inputs, and in the note, here you have a set of quotation marks. Don't delete the quotation marks. Whatever text you want to appear inside of RadarScreen, make sure that it's inside the quotations that are here. So I can say, I purchased 100 shares on 6/1. Now, if that's my note, I just click OK, and that note will appear right here inside of my RadarScreen. So a lot of times, we have our own watch list, but we want to make some notes next to them. Custom note is a great way to do that. Just a couple things to remember. To put in a text in there is not as easy as Excel, where you click on the cell and you type in directly inside the cell. You have to either double click on the cell, go to inputs, and make sure that your annotation appears within the quotation marks inside of that field. That's all you need to be aware of. But I think it comes in very handy, especially if you want to put in any notes along with your watch list. Okay. And that's it. That's my class for today. So I want to appreciate the time that you spent here with me. Take a look at all the custom indicators that are built into TradeStation, designed for you to provide your own formula and your own comparisons, and see if you have true or false conditions. They're great studies to look at. But if you really want to create your own, we can also do that. And I can show you how to do that on the Easy Language series. But thanks again for your time. Hope you guys enjoyed the information. I'm looking forward to seeing you in my future classes. I know that Manolo has been sending the links for our next classes. So make sure that you register and join me, okay? Have a wonderful afternoon. Thanks for joining me today, and I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.